Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. Now that my two informative videos are done for the day, it's time to talk about current events in the online fitness community. And it appears that the autopsy has been released for Dallas McCarver. So let me put on my +5 out of weaponsmithing, work on skilling up my crafting a little bit. And let's talk about this. And this one's not going to be funny. I'm not going to make jokes because this is really serious. All right, you had a young man at 26 years old drop dead who had a lot of fans, a lot of people who followed him, a lot of people who looked up to him. All right, there's nothing funny I can think of about that. Nothing amusing at all. So we're going to keep this one dead serious. Nova's going to run back and forth. All right. I was surprised at the findings because what did I say that I suspected that he went hypoglycemic from his insulin, choked on his food while hypoglycemic, and that's probably what happened. It involved the insulin. They did note that the use of HGH and insulin was part of his past. They didn't think they were particularly contributing factors at this point. I'm going to jump into the actual cause here and what they found in a minute. But on a little side note, some people said, I'm confused by the toxicology. I'm confused by the toxicology. Why did they find normal levels of testosterone, but they found tren in his system? I don't understand. How could he be that big at normal test levels? And let me break this down. So there's some confusion there. A lot of people out here do not know what athletes and bodybuilders do. It has actually been common. It started in Eastern Europe about 15 years ago. Russian and Eastern European lifters started finding that if they ran really high doses of an anabolic with a conservative amount of testosterone, a replacement dose, they got less side effects. Particularly that's been noted with tren. People don't bloat as much. People do not bloat as much. So if you have someone who's concerned about bloating and puffy face and all that stuff, it's not uncommon for people to run a maintenance amount of testosterone just for the mild anabolic effect, the synergy with it, maintain normal mood, sex drive, all that stuff, and then they will blast some other anabolic with it. All right, it's not everyone stacks the two in large amounts. In fact, that's the highest side effect way to do it. Guys who are trying to get as much as they can and regulate side effects, and he probably used enormous amounts of trends, and that's what I'm going to get to with this autopsy. This is very clearly abuse, massive abuse of tren. I think is a big factor here in IGF-1. I think that's what's going on. But for what he's trying to do to gain purely lean muscle at this point, he's stacking HGH, stuff like that, with mega doses of tren and keeping the test low. The whole point there is that that will reduce the amount of fat he gains from all the insulin loading and all the insulin he's using. Okay, that'll reduce the amount of fat because to run a stack like that will allow him to get massive while minimizing fat gain. All right, you guys understand that's what's going on. And people were like, well, they found trace. No, they didn't find trace amounts of tren. All they noted was the metabolites. They didn't pull blood work to see how much tren was in his system. That requires a special test. They're not going to do that. All right, they're not going to do that. They just noted that if the metabolites were there, they found it in his system. They didn't actually do anything to determine the amount. We didn't get a number. That is most likely what he was doing. That's actually fairly common in some bodybuilding circles and in even strength athlete circles for people who are in weight classes. You have weight classes to make, that's actually really common. So what did we find? Autopsy findings. They found 6 things. They found 6 medical problems. Now this kid was 26 years old. 26 years old. And these are the problems they found. The primary cause of death was determined to be severe cardiomyalgia with concentric left ventricular hypertrophy. All right. And that's also, I believe, the osteosclerosis, and that with it together what caused it, which was number 2, coronary artery atherosclerosis. That's hardening of the arteries. Okay, for people who don't understand what happened, when you call athletes heart, athletes get left ventricular hypertrophy. When it's only in an athlete who's purely from exercising, it's not considered to be dangerous. Someone who is not athletic who gets it, it is dangerous and it can kill you. And in his case, that was the primary cause. Basically, the left ventricle wall of his heart got so large that his heart could no longer beat. and it had a heart attack. It had to work too hard to beat, and it stopped. And he blacked out. All right, that's a massive heart attack. And when they say severe, they didn't say left ventricular hypertrophy. The autopsy says severe left ventricular hypertrophy. In other words, both anabolic abuse combined with really, really high blood pressure. High blood pressure is the leading cause of left ventricular hypertrophy. It's the leading cause of it. High blood pressure. Well, this guy blasts a bunch of gear, maintains a really high body weight. Think about it. Doesn't that usually cause a raise in blood pressure? And is it going to stay elevated all the time? Combine that with the growth of that from both the training, from the drugs, and then the high blood pressure to top it all off all the time. It's a recipe for disaster. Now, people worry about this all the time. They're like, well, this stuff happens in people's 40s. Like Rich Piana and others, right? This happened at 26. It means this kid had been abusing the hell out of gear for 5 or 6 or more years, which makes sense. He was the first guy to turn pro at 21. Youngest IFBB pro ever. That means he was probably abusing anabolics in high school to even be at that level. And I don't mean using, I mean abusing. Very large doses. All right? And in this case, it killed him. His heart enlarged so much from the combined factors there, the excessive drug use, the exercise, the high body weight, the high blood pressure, are all factors that can increase that can cause that to grow. They're all piled together in large excess. The kid's heart stopped beating, combined with the hardening of the arteries. The hardening of the arteries around there makes it harder to beat. People say, what causes hardening of the arteries? LDL cholesterol. That is no longer subject to debate. That is a conclusive scientific finding as of this year. Elevated LDL cholesterol causes hardening of the arteries. Particularly more so when HDL is low, but LDL by itself can do it. This is why we now know that ketogenic diets are stupid and dangerous. They will kill you in the long term. If you run them up into your middle age, they are dangerous because they elevate LDL. They cause this. Well, certain anabolics exacerbate this. The ones that have been noted to do it the worst in studies in humans have been any of the nandrolones. Trenbolone is a nandrolone derivative. See where we're going here? Abuse of nandrolone has high LDL cholesterol, also hardening of the arteries. This ties in to those two factors combined together, hardening of the arteries with the enlarged ventricle, excessively enlarged. Basically, his heart just couldn't work in that area because the arteries are hard also around it, and it makes it even harder to beat. His heart just gave out. It just quit. It couldn't beat. They also found other problems. Again, chronic issues. They said his lungs were heavy. Again, there was no mucus or anything, so there was no infection or anything else causing it. Again, they don't understand, probably don't understand why they saw that. We'll get to that in a minute. He had an enlarged liver. Right, an enlarged liver, enlarged kidneys, and he also had cancer in his thyroid. Whew, this is, this whole recipe, it's like the stuff that caught up with him is what killed him, but some of this other stuff, 5-10 years down the road, probably would have killed him also. Even if the other thing hadn't gotten him, he was on his way out by his 30s due to these other factors. Why are all these organs hypertrophied? IGF-1. IGF-1. All right, all these big bodybuilders use it. It creates a big synergy with their other stuff. All that other stuff, they only need any anabolic, and he used Tren, the strongest anabolic out there. He uses growth hormone, insulin, and then IGF-1 is the other part of the cocktail. IGF-1, in my experience, I've observed causes organ growth. And I've seen it. I've seen guys who were really lean who used a bunch of IGF-1 who started getting the distended abdomen while being under 200 pounds. I had a friend who it happened to. He was losing body fat, but after using large amounts of it, his waistline did go up and his upper abs and stuff protruded out, and they didn't go back down. My experience over the years, I think that's what causes this. There's organ hypertrophy as a result of abusing the IGF-1, particularly with the insulin. The insulin abuse will contribute to the fatty liver, any other hepatotoxicity, all of that going on. So what's going on with the thyroid? Bodybuilders use thyroid meds. In other words, you use things like IGF-1 and insulin, those proliferate cancer. Okay? We know that. That's a recipe for increasing your chance of getting cancer right there. Weightlifting and other stuff reduce your chance. Cardio reduces your chance. Clean diet reduces your chances of getting cancer. Pinning insulin and pinning IGF-1 increase your chances of getting cancer. His thyroid was probably abused because of the thyroid meds he used for cutting. A lot of bodybuilders, and this is where it gets tricky again, you've got to know what people do. A lot of guys have figured out that using certain thyroid meds amplifies a synergy with the growth hormone. So they'll take a thyroid med with the growth hormone. Usually T4. Well, the problem with that, you guys see where we're going? He's taking all these cancer-causing substances, and his thyroid's being a little abused and shutting down because it doesn't need stuff. He's got all this insulin, IGF-1 in his system. He gets a little tumor starting in the thyroid. And because he's on thyroid meds all the time, very possibly even bulking, because that's common in the bodybuilding world. That's common in their stack to run thyroid meds because of the synergy with the HGH. Masks the symptoms. He doesn't realize he's got a problem with his thyroid, because there are symptoms you're going to get, particularly lethargy. I've got a good friend who she's gone through a lot of thyroid problems, and when her meds are off, she has problems. But you guys see where this is going. If he is on something that masks the effects of a low thyroid or your thyroid not working, he's not going to realize there's anything wrong with it. And you just combine that with all the other stuff he's got going on, so what? He's not going to notice the lethargy from it. He's on medications that block it. All the T4 he was most likely using with the HGH. Again, trying to stay as lean as possible, and keep the highest energy turnover possible while stacking on muscle. It's part of that combination, that cocktail these guys do. It would have masked it, and he wouldn't have known that he had a problem with his thyroid. Normally, you would get symptoms of this. When something goes wrong with your thyroid, the first thing you start noticing is a lot of lethargy, tiredness, fatigue, irritability that you don't have another explanation for. And one blood test, they can pull a single blood test will determine there's a problem, something with your thyroid. When you report severe lethargy, the basic blood work, most fasting glucose tests are going to have thyroid hormone panel. So they'll identify it really quickly. His was going unidentified. That would have caught up with him. All right, that's going to be a problem in the long term also. So this whole thing is just a big mess of what we're looking at here. But here's the thing. People stand there and think that if they abuse excessive amounts of gear and they get up to a high body weight, that it's not going to catch up for them for a long time. In this case, his excessive use, and how do you guys think he got that big? How do you think he got to 300 pounds running a low test stack? Because it's very clear looking at this blood work, that's the sort of stack he runs, and I'm familiar with that sort of stack. I know plenty of guys who do that sort of stack. He's abusing trenbolone in massive amounts, probably is his primary anabolic, to get where he needed to go, stacking that with his growth hormone and stuff. The high blood pressure from it, the enlargement of the aorta from it, combining that with all the weight, killed him of a heart attack at 26. 26 years old, not 36, not 46 like Rich Piana, 26. Now, all you kids out there, all the time I see kids out there talking about they're going to use a gram of tren a week. Think that's a good idea? Looking at this autopsy, looking at the toxicology, and looking at what we know causes this factors that he had. You really, really think that's a good idea? Because that killed him at 26 years old. Not 36. In his prime chick-getting years, guys. 26. This bodybuilding lifestyle is crazy. And this kid paid a price for it. And hopefully, the only good thing we can probably pull from this woke a lot of people up. This woke a lot of people up to say, you know what? This has gotten out of control. This is no longer a game. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.